Hi, today I'm going to talk about what happens when the king gets in front of the pawn. It's obvious that the king in front of the pawn stops it, so this pawn can't bulldoze the king out the way, and this king is also in the square of the pawn, so that means that the pawn will be captured. But in an ideal world, the pawn goes forward, and because it's so strong, the king just gets out the way. It's so scared of capturing this pawn. And when the pawn promotes to a queen, then the king is hopeless. But there's two things wrong with the picture. When the pawn goes forward, the king can capture the pawn. And even if the king was a super nice guy, and it was like, hey, I'll let you promote, I'm such a nice guy, then it promotes into a queen, and then, oops, sorry, it captures it anyway. But it's not going to be the end of the world for this pawn, because we'll throw in our king. Now when we do that, we have protection, because the king forms a barrier around it. So these two squares right here are protected, and this king can never get in the way. So we'll push our pawn forward, and these squares are protected. The only square for the king to go is this way. If it goes there, there, it's in check. So this is forced. And now we want to promote this pawn, but there's one problem, that when this happens, it just captures it. So we're not going to let that happen. We're going to secure this square first for the pawn with the barrier that we have. And now this is guaranteed. This pawn is untouchable. It's going to promote to a queen, and so the king runs away. Oops, I promoted to a knight, but in better days it'll promote to a queen. And so the king runs away, and eventually it's going to be checkmate, like I'll show in a future video. So another thing could happen, that it could be not white's turn, where we would just push the pawn here and then the king has to go that way, but it could be black to move. And for you blindfold players out there, white king is on e6, white pawn is on d6, and the black king is on d8. So with black to move, black will always try to get in front of the pawn. Obviously this is impossible. The black king cannot go to d7 because it's protected by the barrier of the white king. The only other place for it to go is to go here, and it turns out that that works, because there's no progress that can be made with the king. The white king can go forward because it will be in check. This black king forms a barrier. It's like no man's land. So the only thing for it to do is to push the pawn, but then we just get back in front of the pawn, and the white king can't go here, which would guarantee the security of this square, d8, because it's in check. So it can't also go to these squares, f7, f6, f5, because then the black king takes the pawn. The only other square for it to go, and also it can't go behind because it'll capture the pawn. The only square for it to go is on d6, but that means that the black king has nowhere to go, and so it's over. The game is over, but it's not checkmate, because for checkmate you need a check. So we call this stalemate, so it's a draw. And the rule is that you should always stay in front of the pawn if you're the black side, because then you'll blockade it. And if the king tries to get in the way, well, you just blockade the king, because the king can be the only one that destroys your blockade. So you're basically forcing this pawn to take a detour, and because pawns can only go forward, they can't change direction, there is no detour, so the game is over. But if black is careless and he's like, oh, I'm just gonna let this king go in front of the way because I only care about blockading the pawn, well, if it goes there, then now this king secures the queening of the pawn. So now this black king has to run away, and there's nothing that can be done. And it didn't promote to a knight this time. So now we have this right here. We have another situation. It's almost the same one as before, where you can imagine that the 6th rank is this barrier, the border, and right now it's white to move. So right there we push the pawn to d4, and if this really was the border, then the black king has to go here, and then we just go forward, and then this pawn just promotes, just goes forward. But there's one problem. This isn't the border of the board, so like I talked about, we just blockade this pawn. We just get in front of it, and this king tries to secure this square, d5, but we're not going to let that happen. We're just going to blockade the king. The only thing that can happen now, as we saw before, is that they push the pawn, because if they try to go back with the king, we just get in front of the pawn. And this is just all you need to do to blockade this. So it tries to go there, and we have to go back. So they'll try to go there, but we just get in front of the king again. So that's the rule, just stay in front of this pawn. So they'll try to be tricky, and they'll try to go like that, but we always just do the same thing. It doesn't matter whether we go here or here, but it's always better to just stay in front of the pawn. They can also try to go there, but that wouldn't work out. We will just take this pawn, and if they go there, we just go back, staying in front of the pawn. There's no way that this pawn's going to get through. The king goes back, we just get in front of the king. So the rule is to always stay in front of the pawn, and if you can't do that, just stay in front of the king. The king's the only one that can destroy the blockade. So the game continued. Yeah, we just stay there, they go there, we stay in front of the king, same old, we're staying in front of the pawn. Now the king's threatening to go here, so we have to stop that. And this is the only thing that can happen. So we go back, they'll try to be tricky, but it's the same thing, you just do that. And they can't go there, they can't go there, so they have to do that. And this would be an obvious mistake, because then the king goes here, and then the black king goes there, and suddenly it's game over. But this is an obvious mistake because you're not staying in front of the pawn. You must always stay in front of the pawn no matter what, and that's all there is to it. If it's black to move here, because with white to move you just push the pawn there, and still a draw. But with black to move you just blockade the king. With white to move d4, you just push the black king to d6, and the blockade is achieved. Now the only other different situation is when you have the white king in front of the pawn, and there's two ways to go about this, with white to move and with black to move. With white to move, you just always stay in front of the king. There's nothing that can be done. It can't go back because we'll just go back and block this pawn. So it wants to go there, but now we can definitely blockade this pawn, and then we just blockade the king, and that's all it boils down to. So moving back and forth, you can see that you're head to head with the king, and you just maintain the no man's land so that the king can never break your barrier, your blockade. Now with black to move, it's actually a done deal, because for black, because when you go here, it's the only way to maintain the blockade, since if you go here, the white king goes there, and then it's game over. You just push the pawn. Now you have to go there, so we just keep showing the king back, and now we're creating space for this pawn to go forward. So it goes there, and now there's no choice but for the black king to go that way. And We go here, and now the path is secure for the pawn to march forward. So the black king goes there, and then we push our pawn forward, and it's almost guaranteed. Now the black king tries to capture this pawn. It's threatening to go there to d5, but we just go here, and then we have another barrier. The black king has no choice but to go back, and then we just push our pawn forward. So it goes there, but now we have the same pattern again. So it goes there, and now this path is guaranteed. The pawn is going to promote. Now the last situation is when you have the black king in front and the white king there. As we've seen before, this would be a draw with the black king just staying in front of the white king, but this is the only exception, where the pawn goes here and the black king is like, haha, you made a mistake, now I can just blockade you. But in an ideal world, the king would stay in the blockade of the pawn. It would go to d9 in this case, but d9 doesn't exist, so it has to go out the way, and you are going to queen. And that's it for what you do when the king is in front of the pawn and when the king is in the square of the pawn. You have to make sure that the king can't blockade your pawn, and you just have to know that this stalemating pattern over here would be a draw. So right here, that's a draw. So this is what black wants to do. It wants to get there and just blockade and have no moves. But that's all you have to do. If you like this video, make sure to donate. Link is in the description, and I'll see you in the next one.